Hello and welcome, everyone. We are so grateful you are here. You are here for our Land Justice Futures webinar, Making History, Behind the Scenes of a Historic Win for Land Justice. You are just seeing some photos from the October 31st rematriation ceremony, as well as a recording of the Medicine Rock drum group that was performing during the opening of that ceremony. Today, we'll have the great honor of speaking with representatives of the Flambeau Ojibwe and the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration, two communities who made history a few weeks ago with the first known return of Catholic-owned land to a tribal nation in the name of reparations for colonization and boarding schools. And it was also the first known rematriation of land from Catholic sisters. So again, that happened on October 31st with the return of the sisters' Marywood Franciscan Spirituality Center on Trout Lake in northern Wisconsin. So this is where you're at. Hopefully you're in the right place. If you are new to us and our work, a brief introduction. Land Justice Futures works with movement partners and religious landowners to heal stories on sacred lands by creating land transitions that are rooted in racial and ecological justice. With a holistic exploration of how racism, colonization, the church, climate change, and private property all intersect, we help Christian communities across the United States engage with the land discernment process as a prophetic opening for healing and repair, whether those transitions are coming in the next 3 years or in the next 20. We define land justice as having 3 parts. First, protecting land from extraction and speculation. Second, regenerating its health. And third, expanding stewardship and governance to the communities who have been most deeply harmed by dispossession and colonization, including and especially Black and Indigenous communities. In this work, we are a small part of a much older, much larger movement, and we are so grateful to be in cahoots with dozens of movement partners since the start of this work, a few of whom you'll see here on this screen. Land Justice Futures is currently working with 19 communities across the United States, sisters and other religious communities that are looking to find new futures for the lands that they have loved and stewarded. You can find out more information about this deeper cohort-based work with faith communities through our link here about the Focus Community Program. And if I may, I just want to note, this is an exciting moment for our focus communities as well, who have been supporting one another, communities across the country that have been learning together. If folks who are part of a focus community can just raise their hand or give a wave on screen, I would just love to recognize the many sisters who have been part of this movement for the last 3 years. It's such an honor to get to be in this work with you. And this feels like a community win. So the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration, which is the Wisconsin-based community that was part of this rematriation, is a community we've been working with since the start of Land Justice Futures. They were part of our first cohort in the Focus Community Program, and they are the first of our communities to complete a land justice transition. In our work, we see a wide spectrum of how land justice can take shape, brought about by the many different factors, strategies, and relationships that are really specific to each context and the communities involved. And so today we are looking forward to diving into this specific story and this specific process that led towards this historic first and we'll be learning about that reunion and what this reunion means from the Lac de Flambeau and the FSPA community. After this webinar, you can also learn more by checking out our resource library. There you can find case studies, courses, videos, discussions with leaders in the land justice movement. Some helpful starting places are our article on the Doctrine of Discovery, our first ever zine, and our recently published Native Burials Guide co-authored with the Native American Rights Fund. And if you're interested in something more robust, please get in touch with us about consulting or hosting a workshop or special event with your community. Okay, so that's a bit of who we are. Hello to those who might be new. Before we begin, we just want to also get a sense as to who else is here. The news of this land return has traveled pretty far and wide, and so we'd love to have a glimpse as to who's here. Is this your first time with Land Justice Futures? Are you a sister? Are you in movement? We'd love to hear from you with this little poll that has popped up. So if you could just take a few seconds to answer those two questions. Who are you? And are you new to Land Justice Futures? All right. Give a few more seconds for folks to reply. All right, 10, 9, 8, 7. All right, let's go ahead and close this poll. We've got about 75% participation, so that's probably good. All right, interesting. So we've got a lot of folks who are lay members of religious communities and our sisters. We have a lot of folks that are just individuals interested in land justice, and a smattering of other folks as well. And it looks like, yeah, about a third are first timers. So welcome. We're so glad you're here. Welcome to the movement. We hope that you get to, yeah, learn a lot here and learn from the folks who really have something to share with us today. All right. Well, today, as we've been saying, we're marking a historic land return and celebrating a victory in the land justice movement, and with the communities and movement partners we've been working with for these last 3 to 4 years. We're going to be talking about a land return that took place in what is currently named on maps as Trout Lake, outside of Arbor Vitae. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you get it. Northern Wisconsin, the woods, about 15 minutes from the Lac de Flambeau Ojibwe Tribal Reservation. This property is about 2 acres on the water with a large lodge, which you saw in some of those photos, an office building, and 4 cabins. It's remaining completely furnished, everything from kitchen utensils and office supplies to rocking chairs and bedding. I believe it sleeps upward of like 25 or so people. That was my count based on the beds I saw, but someone from FSPA can... Oh, Brittany's going higher. Higher, okay, much higher. I don't know how much higher. The property has a market value of $2.6 million and was sold to the tribe for $30,000, so a little over 1% of market value. And we'll be talking to the sisters and the tribal representatives who were involved in this historic rematriation. But before we do, I want to invite Greg Johnson to help orient us on this call to the history of the land, and specifically the Ojibwe history on this land. In this work, one of the things that we often need to start with is realizing that the histories that we think we know are often biased or misleading or just flat out inaccurate. And we have to correct those colonial narratives that have shaped our thinking. So we're so grateful that Greg is here to share an Ojibwe perspective of the history of this land. Greg, are you spotlit with me yet? There you are. Hi. thank you for being here. Could you please introduce yourself and help this audience understand more about the land that we're speaking about and some of the, ooh, there we go, and some of the key pieces of Ojibwe history related to this part of your territory.
Sure. Yeah. Bonjour, Indinaway Maganaduk, Piskakune, Indigenous Kaz, Biju, Indode, Maswaganing, Shikanagading, and Ujaba, Undapanamoad, Baaw, Jaganashi Moen, Ungum. So, my name is Greg Johnson. My Ojibwe name is Piskakune, and I come from the Lac de Flambeau Ojibwe Reservation. I was born and raised around the area here, and I am one of the language teachers and cultural teachers, and uh, I do a lot with their communities as far as funerals and ceremonies and things like that. Things that are close to the heart of our people. And so I get to see a whole another side of life here on the reservation, and a lot of other people outside of the reservation don't really get to see that. And so I'm blessed with coming from a large family, and a lot of my people are directly involved with historical events in our tribe's past. So I guess just let me begin by saying, I'm really happy that the tribe had acquired this new land through an agreement with the sisters and all the powers that be, and it just makes more of a return of land possible to our people that was unfortunately in many cases taken away by nefarious and uh, at the time legal ways, uh, and so um, prior to the 1700s, our people lived up on Madeline Island. And even before that, it goes way back. Our people lived on the East Coast. And that's the teachings that we get from our elders. And following a vision, a migration of some of our spiritual people, that's who we ended up in the area where we're at today. We before the 1700s, we came here. We did a very long, centuries long migration from the East Coast to the Great Lakes region. And wherever there's a Ojibwe settlement, you'll see there's a plant that grows in the water. We call it monoman. And that's a crucial part of our existence. And that's one of the things that'll help us become stronger and healthful. And so every settlement of wild Ojibways, you'll see wild rice abundant nearby. And so Trout Lake was one of the places where they had a lot of wild rice. And here in Lac de Flambeau, they had a lot of wild rice. Bad River has a lot of wild rice, Mole Lake, so on and so forth. You see all these established reservations and Ojibwe communities today. They're around bodies of wild rice. And so we don't really talk about that publicly, but that's one of the reasons why we exist. And the same with the people over at Troll Lake Band. There was a leader, his name was Keistano, and he was one of the leaders of the band at the time. And his people existed there because of Monoman and trapping and hunting and fishing, and that was a big part of cultural life at the time. And so later on, when our reservation was established in 1854, all the tribal people that were living outside of the established reservation in 1854, they had to be removed. They had to be brought back here in order to receive their annuity payments and their promises by the United States government. And so all those surrounding communities, which included Trout Lake, there was bands up in Mercer. There was about 39 different bands within Waswaganing. So if you go back in time, I had a great grandmother. Her name was a great grandmother. Her name was Ayanji Gokwe, and she was born in Mosinee on a little island on the Wisconsin River in a wigwam. Okay, and so if you would have went back and you would ask your parents, where are you from? And they would say Waswaganing. So Waswaganing is the Ojibwe translation for Lac de Flambeau. And Lac de Flambeau wasn't just the reservation as we see it today. It was actually went from Wausau, Wisconsin, all the way up to Waters Meet, Michigan, and then from Jidezibing, Pelican River, Pelican Lake over by east of the reservation, all the way over towards Park Falls. It was a big, massive area, and that was considered Waswaganing territory. So any one of those 38, 39 villages at the time, if you ask them where are we at, and they would say Waswaganing. And it wasn't until the land grab and colonization, everything in 1854, all the surrounding tribes were brought in and removed from their traditional lands. And again, including Trout Lake and the people down in Merrill, the Wisconsin River Band, they were all absorbed into the Lac du Flambeau reservation, and that was in 1854. And so that's kind of a snapshot of what happened. Um, you know, of course, it would take 6 days to tell you the whole story, but we're on a limited time here, and we also have a lot of things that we don't talk about. We don't talk about what their diet was, and what their lifestyle was, and how much they love their families, and what they did to protect their land and their communities. And so at the time, it was a real hostile time in the 17 and 1800s. There was a lot of there was pressure from opposing tribes. There was also pressure from the non-native people. They wanted this beautiful land. They wanted it for themselves. And so government policy and a lot of other factors, stripped our land away from our people. And so it makes me happy to be a part of witnessing something as wonderful as a return like this. So it makes me happy. So we have our one of our traditional pieces of land back. It might just be a fraction of what we originally had, but it's still something. And it means something to me, and it means something to my friends who are direct descendants of those people up there. I have a lot of my friends that are descended directly from the people that lived on the islands and all the way around that lake. And so that means a lot. And we've been having discussions, we've been having a lot of discussions about what this means to them. And they just feel happy that their relatives were a part of that. And that some of that land is being returned in good faith and in a good way. So
Thank you so much, Greg, for grounding us with that history
sure.
and that present. You shared a little bit about the name of the particular area that the Marywood property sits on. Is there anything else you'd like to share about that particular part of Trout Lake and kind of what you're learning or remembering from your friends and
Yeah,
just in the language?
sure. So there was an elder. She was one of my teachers back in the day. Um, she was born on that island, one of those islands that was out. And she talked about growing up on the island, and eventually they were forcibly removed off that island. And so that just happened. That just happened here not too long ago. That happened in my teacher's lifetime. And so we talk about history. People want to think this all happened long ago. It wasn't. It wasn't long ago. It just happened. And so once the reservation was established in 1854, there were still bands that were living nomadically, and she was part of one of those bands. And they lived up on that island until they got forcibly removed. And there was families that lived around the island, and they were forcibly removed by police, at the time. And so a lot of that, a lot of those stories are still here. They're not written about. We hear about them from older people, older folks. And one of the words that I had recently, I think it was about a year ago, we were talking about it with people that worked over at the Short River. One of my friends, she works as a wild rice technician, and she was digging into these old files, and she had found a name, and it didn't sound right. It didn't translate into anything that meant anything to language speakers. And so me and one of my teachers, we went over that word, and we basically determined that it actually talks about the traditional name of the Trout Lake band in Trout Lake area was called Makade Ike. And what that alludes to is it literally translates into somebody doing something, and they're making something black. And so that could be dyeing something, maybe a hide, or it could be something to do with mud, or maybe even something with a fire. When you get those ashes, there's ceremonies that revolve around that making of the black um, item, whatever that is. And so it could go along those, and a lot of those old translations are lost to time. We really don't know because that was a long time ago. That was a long time ago. But that name stuck that whole time. And so we just recently learned about it. We thought about it. We talked about it, and we had translated it, and that's basically what it translates to. The original name of the land isn't Trout Lake. It's Makade Ike, the place where they make something black.
Thank you.
Sure.
And we had during the ceremony some of the direct descendants of folks who were born on that island that we could see from the edge of the lake. So yeah, thank you for reminding us that this is not history. This is now.
Right.
I'm going to bring in some of our other guests. We have Zach Allen from the Lac de Flambeau. We have Sister Eileen McKenzie and Sister Sue Ernster as well from the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration. And I will also have another guest from Lac de Flambeau joining us shortly as well. Would you like to, can you all just briefly introduce yourselves and who you are? And then I'll kick it off some questions.
Hi, I'm Sister Eileen McKenzie, Franciscan Sister Perpetual Adoration. I currently live and minister at the Arizona-Mexican border here in Ambos Nogales, and I served in leadership as the president of the congregation from 2018 to 2022.
I'm Sister Sue Ernster. I'm a Franciscan Sister, Perpetual Adoration, and I currently serve as president of the congregation from 2022 until 2026. And I was on the previous team when Eileen was president from 2018 to 2022. And so we were part of the first Land Justice Futures communities.
Bonjour, hello, my name is Zachary Allen. I am with the Lac de Flambeau Business Development Corporation. I am our marketing and PR manager. I've been with the company for about 7 years now, but I am also an enrolled member of the Lac de Flambeau tribe.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much for being here. It is such an honor. And in case Greg didn't, I think he might have mentioned it. Greg is an Ojibwe teacher, language teacher on the reservation, as well as a culture bearer. And also Zach is a council member now, a newly I don't know if you condole council members, but you're a newly appointed council member for the Lac de Flambeau as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we'd love to maybe start to set some context for the sisters here as well. Sister Sue, can you share a little bit about who the FSPAs are and what your community cares about and how your community came to be in Wisconsin? And also just what was Marywood for your community, this land that we're talking about today? What did it mean to the sisters, and when did you realize you'd have to let it go?
Well, I think Eileen and I are going to tag team on this one. We're going to tag team on each of them because, yeah, it takes all of us. I'm going to let Eileen start on this, and then we're going to fill in with each other.
We're used to tag teaming. We've been doing it for a while, right? Yeah. So the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration are a community of vowed Catholic women religious, and we're actually the first Franciscan religious congregation that was established in the United States, in the state of Wisconsin. Our founders emigrated from Bavaria during a time of civil unrest, and they came to Wisconsin in 1849 to serve the German immigrants who were there in parochial ways, in education, whatever the needs might have been. I'm kind of taken by just the 5-year difference between our founders landing in Wisconsin and the creation of the reservation that Greg referred to. So it was only 5 years difference between that time. So yes, we were founded, and over time we moved from Milwaukee, where we initially came, and moved to La Crosse, Wisconsin, where we established our mother house, and where we eventually were missioned in different areas. We have a history of healthcare, a history of education, a history of being in parishes, and doing pastoral ministry. And then from 1883 until 1969, we ministered an Indian boarding at Black River, except Black River, but at the Bad River with the Ojibwe people on the Bad River Reservation, St. Mary's. We have, since I've been in the congregation, which has been almost 25 years now, we no longer serve in schools. We really no longer serve in hospitals. And even our movement in parishes has been shifting over time. And so now we work a lot with our affiliates and our collaborators in mission and our partners in different areas. And most recently, we've been focusing a lot in 3 major areas that have hold a lot of interest for us, and we feel that we're called to these in different ways. One is in our relationships with each other, with the people that we minister to, the people that minister with us, and we in our previous in our actually in our mission assembly, we talked about, kind of cultivating a culture of encounter. And that's understood as people who are traditionally other than us, or that we have othered in one way or another. And where there is significant suffering in that. And so we try to develop, and we've been wanting and moving toward, and we really care about developing these relationships of encounter with people who are suffering and our suffering earth. And in the Franciscan tradition, of course, we call her Mother Earth. Another area that is really important to us is gospel living and what transforms us by living the gospel. We believe that 2 things come out of that: joy and freedom. But it's not an easy transformation. And so this is an area that we place a lot of our prayers and our missionary efforts into. And it's really kind of embedded within those relationships of encounter. And then the third area that we've been working on pretty heavily, I would say, since 2018 is unity and diversity. Now, our constitutions are called unity and diversity. And for those of us who aren't in a religious congregation on this call, our constitutions are rules of life. They give us parameters to how to live the life that we feel that we've been called. They're canonical, and we place a lot of trust in these, and that our constitutions have been named unity and diversity since the 1980s. Struck us as important, and so we have kind of committed to living authentic. We would say authentic unity and diversity, and that really has been looking at who we are in society, and particularly focusing on our white privilege. The calls to learning, to unlearning, to solidarity, and to working more toward equity and inclusion of all. And again, we see this as not only with people, but with all of creation.
Thank you. Sister Sue, I take it you're going to lead in with what is Marywood and what does it mean for your sisters, and how did this process start with realizing you're going to have to let it go?
Well, we've owned the property since 1966, and it came to be because one of our sisters was with her family vacationing up in the area and met the previous owner who was ready to transition the property and wanted it to go to an organization that would honor the space for rest and reflection. And so we purchased the property in 1966, and it always has been, up until we transferred it on October 31st, a place for rest and recreation and renewal for us. We also used the space served us, I should say, the space served us as a space for a regional governance headquarters. When we were in provinces and regions, the space, what we called Marywood, was used as the headquarters. And then when we went from provinces and regions to all being back as one unit of governance, we transitioned to a spirituality center in the 90s. And then we continued to use it as a space of recreation and reflection and renewal. And during the pandemic, it became abundantly clear that the space wasn't being fully utilized to its fullest potential for a lot of different reasons. The pandemic affected everyone. And so after the pandemic, at the end of the pandemic, we really started to, and we'd had people who had been present there for many years transition out of ministry at Marywood. And we didn't have as many sisters and affiliates really ministering there. And in 2018, when we chose the provocative movements, we also were in the process of looking at how to best be for the current needs and into the future, and right sizing. And as we are looking at our changing demographics, it became clear over a period of years that we were no longer to be the caretakers of this property. It took a while for us as a congregation to come to this point, and there's still some grieving that's occurring because we loved this space. It means a lot to us. It continues to mean a lot to us and will continue to mean a lot. And we also knew that we couldn't be the best caretakers for it any longer. And when it came time in late 23, early 24, when we fully came to the decision, we were privileged to be in a space of knowing that we did not need to get market rate return for this property. And we have been, as a Franciscans, Francis has said, I have done what is mine to do. Now it is time for you to do what is yours to do. We've been sitting with what is ours to do. There are so many needs, and this was one thing we could do. And I'll leave it there and we'll pick up from that.
Yeah. Well, Zach, I'd love to bring you in a second, but before I do that, I just want to pull out something particular that was mentioned by you, Sister Eileen, which is the boarding school history that FSPAs carry, and the impacts of that are not easy to speak to. They're pretty unfathomable, but I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about how your community's reckoning with that history, how that happened, and how that has led to this moment, how this led to this kind of internal moving towards this kind of act of justice and reparations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're still reckoning with it. I think we're going to reckon with this history for the rest of the rest of our lives. And it's a history to reckon with. That we mentioned history before, and we learn more, right? We learn more, and the more the more we're able to listen to others, the more we're able to reassess our own stories and to integrate more information and more understanding. So from my experience, I was relatively new in my position as leader of the community, and I got an email from Avery Weirs. One, and I had like a sea of emails, no one else probably has like, an inbox that's just a mountain of email. But it was one of those emails, and it was talking about one of our schools, and it was someone who I didn't know. And they were referring to one of our schools. And it wasn't uncommon for me to see other emails of silver jubilees and golden jubilees of schools where our sisters had ministered over the years. And so I didn't answer it right away, if I'm quite honest, because there were some other things that I was looking at in that email box. And by the time I opened that email, and I expected to have, could you write a letter to the graduates of this school, or might Sister so-and-so be available to come and celebrate? I read from Avery that she was graduating from the University of La Crosse, Wisconsin, and she was going to be doing her capstone project on data she collected from St. Mary's boarding school. And the title of that project was Oppression and Resilience in the Attendance Records of St. Mary's Indian Boarding School. And that kind of shook me to the core. I realized that the stories that I had heard about St. Mary's were stories that our sisters had shared in community, and we had kind of set St. Mary's aside as part of our history, but we had moved on. I mean, we left the school the year I was born was when the community left the school. And so we saw it a part of our history that we weren't tending to, for the most part. So this brought it right up into our faces again in a very painful way. I reached out to our archives. I reached out to other sisters who had ministered at St. Mary's as postulants. Really, we didn't have any who were still alive who had ministered there, as a professed sister. And I started to reach out to other areas within the community and say, listen, are you familiar with this? Can you tell me any information about this? And it came as a surprise, and maybe not as much of a surprise to some. So we realized that there were our stories, there was our history that was in our history books that we wrote, and there was a lot of other histories and a lot of other stories that we weren't privy to. We weren't in those circles, and quite frankly, we probably didn't want to hear them. So we reached out. There was a group of us that started to do a little bit more research on this. The leadership team the rest of the team was advised, and then we created a group of sisters just to do research and find out what were some of these stories, who were some of the people that we had increasingly understood were traumatized. And maybe none of us could say, well, I held the ruler, for lack of a better way to say it. But there was severe intergenerational trauma that we couldn't deny. And there was a saying in our community that said, well, we stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before us. And we often say that when we're just touting benchmarks of pride when we're recognizing something that has gone well. And this applied completely. We are standing on the shoulders of those who have gone before us, and we needed to take responsibility for the consequences. I didn't have far to search for more stories because the incredible journalist Marionette Pember writes extensively about her family's trauma and the consequences that their attendance at St. Mary's boarding school and just the intergenerational consequences and the trauma. In fact, she's recently published a book about this. She was one of the major storytellers that I listened to her stories. I read her stories. I spoke with her. She's a very important person that informed us in, and I would say just kept our feet to the fire in a sense. Because there was always the temptations to, that's what they did at that time. And, we weren't doing it. I mean, there's a lot of temptations when you're placed in this situation, if I might say, but we chose to try and have as frank of conversations as we could within the congregation. We chose to learn as much as we could. We reached out to Aaron Pierre, who is a Jesuit and worked with Macaw Black Elk in South Dakota. And they were very helpful with the work that they were doing at Pine Ridge. We worked a little bit with St. Benedict Monastery in St. Joseph, Minnesota. They were also trying to come to terms, well, not trying to come to terms, just to try and figure out what had happened, to unveil and to unearth some of the experiences. And then came to know Brenna Cusson, who is really probably one of our primary links, who introduced us to Land Justice Futures. We immediately turned to the National Native American Boarding School Coalition. We started to look at how we could reach out to people. And then we realized that we had very, very few relationships with people at St. Mary's or from the Ho-Chunk Nation in the La Crosse area, or quite frankly at Lac de Flambeau. But I have to say, we did have more relationships, I think, established with Lac de Flambeau than we did with other areas, with other people that we were searching to see, who were living with the consequences of the St. Mary's boarding school. I'm thinking of Tinker and Sister Marla, since I was going up to Marywood, and I love Marywood deeply. They were very good friends. I know that we have sisters, Sister Rosalind Heil, Sister Carolyn Heil. They also had ministered on the Lac de Flambeau reservation. So there were some of those relationships, but we started to learn more about that. And I think we're continuing to learn more about that. We're being helped along with people who do accompany us. I'm thinking of Henry Greengrass from the Ho-Chunk Nation, as well as Tracy Littlejohn. And there are just others. So I think that the reckoning, I think that's going to be a lifelong process. I hope it's a lifelong process, to tell you the truth, because I was speaking with someone from Bad River one time and talking about what does healing even look like? I don't understand that, and he said, we've been in a relationship for about 100 years. And this is the way it's been. So it's probably going to take another 100 for us to, kind of to get this right. And so I hope it takes us at least 100 years of being really faithful to understanding, and to, within our own community, within our religious community, having some reconciliation around this. then to continue to be in relationship to people who will, to help us understand what other ways we can make reparation. We can, we can still search for the truth and hopefully move toward healing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sister Eileen. And I guess for those who are less familiar, the residential boarding school era was one in which the U.S. government, but also Canada was part of this as well, mandated residential schools for all Native children as a project of assimilation and cultural genocide, erasure of Indigenous languages, cultures, and the severance of family ties and kinship structures. So it's if you don't know as much about that as you would like to or need to, I'm sure there's probably some resources being shared in the chat, as well as the book that Sister Eileen showed there on screen. I'd love to weave you in, Zach. Brittany, unless you want to chime in on this like little transition here. Nope. Okay. Oh, no, there you are. Okay, go ahead.
No, I don't think I need to. I think Sister Eileen told it like, I think what I just want to pull out or highlight is that FSPA was on this journey of reckoning, that then merged with this question about part of what religious that your community was doing was asking, what is the future of these lands that we love? And are there ways that these things speak together? Because the boarding schools ultimately were part of a campaign to remove kids from their family and culture and assimilate a generation. And so I just want to lift up the work that you all did on your own, and then the way that we came together to say, what are the ways that healing can look like in the ways that communities are asking questions about land? And that is where Marywood comes into the picture. So we did some work to say, what could that look like? How can we support you in discerning that and holding these things as together, not separate? And then Zach and President Johnson and others at the Lac du Flambeau tribe get some phone calls, get some outreach, and I wonder if you want to share from your perspective. And we're trying to Araya's on. We're trying to get her up and running on the panel as well. So,
Great.
yeah.
Yeah, Zach, what was it like to get some phone calls from some sisters?
It honestly, when it was first brought to my attention, the thought behind it, as a younger, individual of our tribe, you see stories and you hear the stories of acknowledgement that have kind of been coming out over the past few years or, however many years, but it isn't something that you've been able to like, or I should say I've been able to experience kind of firsthand. And to see it happening right there in front of us and have like tangible something that we as our tribe can experience. And, like you said, the biggest part of it is just acknowledgement of it, and the it's a hard conversation to have, and being able to acknowledge that, on your guys' side and understand, what has happened in the past and being able to come and talk with it with our tribe has really opened up the door to, new partnerships and new, collaboration that could be done. And to see it from, like I said, as a tribal member, is really moving. And on the, from my side on the Business Development Corporation, um, you kind of alluded to it a little bit with the privileges, privileges that our tribe normally hasn't had, and the land acknowledgments that come with that, and the resources, and this is kind of like that stepping stone to kind of start to, really put words to action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. as you say, like the acknowledgement is important, but so is the material repair, the concrete. Can you share a little bit about what this land will enable, how it will be of benefit to the tribe, and we know things aren't set, but there's many ideas, but maybe if you could just give folks a little bit of a sense as to what will be.
Yeah. So, as Sarah said, we don't have like a set plan in place for it right now, as we're still in the early stages of acquiring the land. But I know one of the biggest things that we've talked about in regards to what, plans for it is to kind of use it as like a cultural center, which is things that we've done in the past. Like, for example, talking about the boarding school, we actually have a boarding school here in Lac du Flambeau that we have converted. It's actually houses our TIPO office, our Tribal Historic Preservation. And we've kind of flipped exactly, what the main goal was of the building when it was built, and catered to more what the tribal aspect is, and pushing back on trying to regain our cultural teachings. And Greg Johnson, who spoke here earlier, I've taken courses that he's held there, things that I, wouldn't have been able to do otherwise, with being able to have something like that. And it's exactly kind of what we want to have with this property here as well.
Hmm. Well, I'd love to hear some reflections from any of you about the ceremony on the land itself. Well, I guess Sue and Zach, you can speak to that, and if Araya is on the call yet as well, she can chime in as well.
Laugh, Zach.
Oh, you're good.
The words, it's hard to describe that day. Well, actually, what led up to it. And I'm not going to forget the interview we held with Araya and Brittany with Logan of the Lac du Flambeau radio station before the week before, and it still sticks with me, and I don't think I'm going to ever forget this about the significance for others of this action. And I might be misquoting Araya, and please, Araya, correct me if I misstate this, because there have been other land back actions taken with the Lac du Flambeau. And so I asked Araya, why is this one significant? Yes, thank you, Brittany, for sharing that. And what Araya mentioned was, we are now in white people's space. We are in white people's territory. We are no longer relegated to the reservation. And someone who's had the privilege all of my life, I am still struck by how profound that is, and the humility and the real courage it took for the tribe to engage with us, to even be willing to engage in the conversation, because we are a part of the system that caused the separation. And so the real resilience and humility to engage with us, and respect and kindness that was shown throughout. And that day was just a culmination, and the joy that was ever present that day. I mean, the sun was out, it was predicted to rain, the sun was out, and the energy, because of the reunion of the Lac du Flambeau with the land, was palpable, even more than palpable. And it was electrifying. I think that's all I can say right now. And the real graciousness on both sides. And oh my gosh, there's Greg's. Oh.
Yeah. Zachary, are you good to stay with us for a few more minutes, or do you need to jump off pretty soon?
Yeah, I can stay on for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I monopolized. Sorry, Zach, it's your turn.
No, no, you're good. You're good. I mean, these are all, really important talking points, so I'm happy to be a part of it.
Well, Zach and Greg, I'm curious if you could share anything about what that ceremony felt like to be in for you, and maybe just more broadly, like what does land back or land return or rematriation, whatever word like feels true for you, like what does that mean for you personally? I'd love to hear your reflections on those.
Okay. Yeah, actually at home. My office right at the high school. There during the school day, there's no bandwidth, so I had to come home here to do this call. So I got my son a Siganok here with me, and he's going to benefit from the generosity of the returning of the land. He's going to benefit from that personally. So this is what it's about. It's about our kids. It's about the future. It's about Zach. It's about all the young people. It's about all of our people mending and creating a space for our children and our grandchildren and great grandchildren and so on and so forth. Because when our ancestors signed those treaty rights, they were thinking about me, they were thinking about him, they were thinking about his grandchildren. That's what they were thinking about. And so along came colonization, and along came bigotry and racism and all these hateful things that erased all that away. And so we always say this: it's not up to me, it's not up to the government, it's up to us as a tribe to kind of reweave with our needles and thread and our crafts and our language. We have to reweave what was erased, what was whitewashed. Okay. And this is what happens. This is what happens when you do that. And it's something that happens from all sides, and so we're not waiting for this to happen. But when it does happen, it's a momentous event, because people actually take time and they want to know who we are, and the people that have stripped a lot of it away. They want to know what we're about and why we do what we do. And so Zach pointed on it a little bit earlier. We hear a lot of talk. There's a lot of talk. People will say, okay, we're going to do a land acknowledgement, but what does that really mean? It's just words. It's just air. It doesn't really mean anything. But when you put land behind the land acknowledgement, then it means something. Then it has heart and soul to it. You're actually giving back to the people whose ancestors, that's where our ancestors are buried. They're buried all along that lakeshore. Okay. There's all these $1 million condominiums. There's Airbnb. There's a golf course right across the road. And what they're doing is they're building on the backs of our ancestors. Okay. And we need to talk about that. And nobody wants to hear it. Maybe now they do, but they didn't want to hear that 2 years ago. And so again, I heard somebody mention this earlier. There's a painful reminder in America's ugly past. Okay. And this is one way to open one of those doors and face it, and realize, we can tread, with a lot of heavy hearts, or we can look at this as a good event. Like, for instance, when I was there, Ojibwe people, when they tease you, when they joke with you, that means they like you. And that's a real thing. You heard President Johnson say that over there. Okay. And that's a real factual thing. And Zach knows exactly what I'm talking about. So if somebody makes fun of you, that means they like you. So I remember when I first got there, I was hanging out with Sarah, and we're sitting in the front office. I sat down in that desk, and somebody says, "Hey, can I get in that desk for a second?" I was like, "Geez, you just gave us a building. Now you're kicking me out of the desk already." So those are the types of things that lead to healing. Okay, so we say those things not to be like condescending or demeaning in any way. We say that in order for us all to heal. So that was the perfect moment. And so there's a lot of that that's still going to go on, even though the land is back in tribal hands. There's going to be a lot of healing that's going to take place, and that's going to happen for generations now. And we need land more than anything, okay? Because our tribe isn't run by money. It's run by walleye. It's run by deer meat. It's run by land where we can cultivate and grow our crops and teach our children. That's what the heart of being Anishinaabe is. And I know it's different for different cultures. People use land for mining and exploitation and all these things, but us, we use it for growth. We use it for family, and we use it for ceremonies and healing and health. That's our thing. That land represents our grocery store, our hardware store, our church, and all these things. That's what that is. And it's not just one little piece. It's everything all together. And so that's my rant.
Thank you for your
Greg,
rant, Greg.
I love what you're saying, Greg. And I have to say, I wasn't at the ceremony, but I was holding it from a distance. And as you're talking about the healing, my heart is just kind of growing because for me, and for I think maybe the sisters and affiliates and our family members who would come there, the land and the water and the trees at Trout Lake and that whole area, we saw that as a place of healing. I mean, it was almost like we named it a spirituality center, but I just remember Sister Jolene Brem saying, like, think of the roots and how they're holding you. When you're praying with the trees. And there was this, and we did a lot of our Franciscan spirituality learning there. And it was such a place of healing and restoration, and and it was the land and the water and the beauty that was there in it that gave itself to us. And so I think that those of us who love it so much, the way you're talking, it just makes me think, oh, thank you. Thank you for letting this happen, because this is exactly what we were hoping for and what we were envisioning, and it's even better than what we could imagine. So I don't know. That was just a little.
Okay,
I'll tell the joke. I'll tell a joke about you later, I guess.
but like what I want to say is, prior to the loss of that particular piece of land, okay, what you're talking about had happened there for a long time. You got the land, you picked up on it, you continued, your good feelings, your good thoughts, your connection to the land. And so now it's going to come back and it's going to continue on, and that's where one of the little one of the little cycles wasn't totally destroyed. Maybe prior to you guys picking up the land, we don't know what happened there. We don't know really. There was a little, like I said, that timeline is erased. But again, these are the things that heal that and fix that, And yeah, I just wanted to mention one more thing. I was at a garage sale one time, probably about 3-4 years ago, and I picked up the remnants of this old book, and I was looking through it, and there's all these beautiful, beautiful stories and tales of our people. And so I read the back of it, and I posted a photo of it in the chat, and you guys can read it. But there was a sister, Lorena Levy, I believe her name is. She went around and she talked to different elders up in the Bad River Reservation, and she got all these traditional stories. So where I come from, people that are involved with Christianity or any type of religious background, they leave a bad taste in the traditional community's mouth. The whole, it's just a whole nother horrific thing that had happened in the past to our people. Okay, so when I was reading this book, I was like, not all of them are bad. Somebody wanted to preserve our stories. Okay, and so I actually use some of these stories in my classroom when I teach. And so there's all these little micro connections that I'm making here in the past few months, of this land transfer, and it's kind of uncanny coming from my side too, And I'm sure you guys are all finding out historical documents and a lot of connections, And I think it's all of our spirits kind of working together. I think that's what's happening. So, and I know a lot of the people that are watching probably won't understand that, or maybe they will. I don't know, but I believe that as a tribal member and a father and somebody who cares for the land. I really believe that this is the start of something good. So
Mm. Thank you, Greg and Eileen, for showing us the web, the web that we're a part of and continue to weave. Zach, I know you have to head out soon, but I wanted to make sure that you were able to share more about what land back means to you, what this land back means to you, or what this land return means to you.
Mhm.
And yeah, anything else that you want to share, yeah, before you head out.
Yeah. Working, even the months prior leading up to the actual ceremony, it was exciting, working with Sister Sue and all the other sisters with FSPA and Land Justice Futures. It was moving to see. And, kind of going back to that whole thing of like a tangible act of having that, like you see it, you see the acknowledgments, whether it's through pop culture and everything coming on today. Where it's kind of opening up and you're seeing it, but to actually have it happen right here in your face with, your community it's a different feeling there. And I did see in the chat too, one of the things that I think was kind of important to address too, that we experience as a tribe that, Sister Sue, I know conversations that we've had is kind of like with the neighbors, what kind of you guys got to experience firsthand that things that we as a tribe, experience, that you have something that's, a good, positive, uh, uh, event that's happening or, this transfer. And the racism that we experience as a tribe, I mean, it came full-fledged with some of the neighbors that, you guys saw it firsthand, the uncertainty that they had, or like this perception that they have of the tribe is kind of so negative that, it's a little disheartening. But again, it's, with relationships that we have with you guys and being able to share our stories the way that we can, it's, a lot of it's just misinformation, and being able to share the stories that we can hear with like the land transfer, and being able to create these partnerships and relationships where you guys can share that on our behalfs, really helps, grow and shift that mindset.
And Zach, thank you for bringing up about some of the concerns that were raised in this process. And I remember the day when we shared with you, oh, there's some neighbors that are having these concerns, and we named what they were. And I remember going, I don't know how you all do this. And this is my naivete because of my white privilege. And you were like, you said, we get thick skin. And I am still floored with that. And some of the nervousness or uncertainty from the neighbors really gave us the opportunity to stand in what we profess and what we say we believe in the dignity of each human person and in all of creation. And because of the trust we had with you, we didn't acquiesce to the question of putting restrictions on the land. Because remember, Sarah said this is less than 2 acres of land, and there were concerns raised that a casino was going to be put on this land. Anyone that is anywhere near there would know that there's not even enough parking spots for a large conference, let alone a casino. And they continued to still wanted to have it in writing, even after they had been assured. And it was just this, there was this doubt that these were trustworthy. And it was really disheartening. And the opportunity to stand in, we believe in this relationship. We trust this relationship. We're going to move forward.
Yeah. I would love to just pause for a second. There's a moment that I heard about from a meeting that you had with Eric on our team. Brittany, maybe you were there too, and your lawyer and some of the sisters, and you were having this moment of maybe I'll speak in generalities, but you stood together and you said, we are not going to put any restrictions on this. We trust the Lac de Flambeau, and you each took a turn to say where you stood, and it was unanimous. And I get chills when I think about that. Like, that is true solidarity. That is how we repair relationship. That is how we shift and like our own perception of what's possible with one another. So
Yes, and it was you. Thank you, Sarah. It was unanimous that day, and our legal counsel was also present in the meeting. And I remember her because there was some more racism that happened right at, or fear happened right after that meeting, where we had decided we were going to move forward without any restrictions. Our attorney said, "Well, what they're asking for is really nonsensical because it just doesn't make sense." As soon as she got back to her office, there had been a call from an attorney that some of the neighbors had contacted, saying they would like to buy the land and then they would swap it. They would swap the land with and buy the tribe some other land. But they wanted to buy the land on Trout Lake. And we said no, we were not going to change our minds. So it was very interesting, the fear that was really present in this opportunity, and it was a huge learning.
Yeah. Brittany, I know you're hot. You're hot to speak. Preach.
Well, I mean, I feel all 285 of us leaning into this. And I want us to feel that for a second in our last minutes, because what's happening here and what we're grappling with, what we're witnessing with Greg and Zach and Sister Sue and Sister Eileen, is we are trying to do something different than the system that's been set up has taught us. When we talk about property law and deeds and titles, the cornerstone of property law, one, cites Pope's decrees from the 15th centuries saying land uninhabited by Christians is empty and open to be discovered. That's cited into U.S. Supreme Court rulings. And our legal system also it's what exists to control and be a stand-in for relationship and trust. And that's become the status quo. And that's why who has money gets to decide what to do with the land. And that's how the land has become extracted from. And it required removing the first protectors of that land, Native people. And so I just want, when we're talking about this, I don't want us to miss the bigger thing that's happening when we're talking about neighbors' concerns. And, what we're seeing is, here's a group of people that's trying to break this spell that is our modern legal system. And this is one example of what it looks like to just put a little dent in the armor. And all 285 of us on this call, we're here to learn. We're here to be a part of that. And so I just want us to see that and really sit in that's what this community is about. And that's what this moment in history can mean. And I wonder, I know we're short on time, and Sarah, maybe you have a better question for closing, but I guess I'm just like, this was a big first. And what are your hopes? What other doors do you hope this unlocks into the future?
Really hope this is an inspiration for others to consider, and also to really believe that dialogue can make the impossible possible, because it was through the dialogue with the tribe that this happened. If they had not been open to it, this would not have happened. So it was the mutual dialogue. So dialogue is essential.
I think for me, I'm sitting with what Greg was saying about how in the history of his people were forcibly displaced from that area. And we have our country was built to the way it is today through forced displacement of people. And if we can't wrap our heads around that happening 150 years ago, turn on your news now and look at Chicago or North Carolina, where people are also being forcibly displaced. Now, they don't have the same relationship with the land as the original caretakers did, but this is a system that is insatiable. And we're part of this system, right? We're part of it. Either we're on the winning side, or we're on the part that is marginalized, that's displaced, and that suffers. And so what I find hopeful in this is that we just said, let's do it differently. Let's just not keep doing this, even though lawyers tell us this and money managers will tell us that, and that fear is incredible. It's incredible how we make decisions based on fears. And for those of us who are in religious congregations on this call, we're in a fearful time because things are changing so rapidly with the demographics that we have. I think that the motivation of who we are was not built on fear. So we who profess to follow Jesus, he said, if he said it once, he said it a lot of times, fear not. And that I think that it's time for us to lean into faith and step back from fear. And if we want an example of what that resilience looks like, then let's look at the Lac de Flambeau tribe. Let's look at Bad River. Let's look at the peoples who are still here, who are still in touch. They're holding on to their cultures, and they just are faithful to the relationships that have given them life, and they give life back to it. So that's what I'm leaving with. We have choices to make, and I'm grateful when we can step out of what has been to choose life and justice and a little bit of reparation.
Okay, I like what you said. That's really important. That's really incredible, and those observations are immaculate. And what I really like, what I want to say to one of your neighbor out there. Okay, all he's got to do is we got to bring some of our ladies in and cook a magnificent meal and invite them over to eat, and it'll all be solved. It'll be fine. He'll say, "Hey, they're great cooks. They're fine," you know. But you know that's how we address these things. We address it through our ceremonies and our food, and you know they're gonna use lawyers, and they're gonna use money, and they're gonna use intimidation. But we don't work that way. We work differently. We use humor. We use humility. We use things from the land, and it'll be okay. Don't you guys don't have to worry about that. It'll be fine. And back in 2020, I was one of the guys that was shot at. I was on a boat over in Little Saint Germain Lake. Okay, and so just like Zach said, and a few of you had mentioned, we have thick skin. Okay, these are issues that are happening today. These are real issues. And that's how we deal with it. We deal with it the only way we knew how, and it's with, those things I had mentioned before. So no worries about the neighbors. We got that. And if I'm involved with any of this land in the future, I can promise and I can assure you that through the things that I've been taught from my elders and my people, that we will continue to do what we've been doing here isolated on the reservation. But now we're going to be doing it outside of the reservation where it's going to have a bigger impact. there was even talk of one of my good friends, John Greendeer, he was there, and I said, John, the history books say that you guys sold your rights for $1 million, but the history books also say that, back in the day, the people that actually sold that weren't legally able to sell. And so there was a swindle that happened there. I said, well, wouldn't it be cool as if we could use this spot to bring your youth up here to learn how to harvest as they did long ago on Lake Mendota and all these other places? And he said, wouldn't that be something? And we left it at that. And so that means there's room to grow. And that's the kind of a place right there that through your generosity will allow our not only Ojibwe people but other people to learn and learn how to be Ojibwe again and learn how to be Anishinaabe and learn how to be Ho-Chunk and Menominee and all that. So I think I for one I'm very excited about the spot, and yeah, that's my promise as an educator and a future elder and all that we will make it amazing for everybody.
Thank you. Zach, anything you want to say about your hopes or wishes? Round us out.
Yeah. Just to kind of, because I do have to hop off here shortly, but just to kind of close it out. I think the biggest thing that kind of stood out to me too, is a conversation I had with Sister Sue the day of the ceremony. And she had talked about kind of like what what does this mean now that the actual ceremony is done and we have the land? Like what does that mean for both of us or for our communities? And I I wanted to like make
I
it
would like a
apparent
little more water.
that like it it doesn't stop here. Like, we want to continue this relationship and grow this relationship between, the sisters and the tribe. And, whether it's just, being involved in community events and sharing our culture with you guys. I think, the options are, endless. But I think it's important that we continue to grow our relationship that we have here and continue to talk and discuss and learn with each other.
And we look forward to the connection, Zach. We really do.
Us as well.
Gosh, well, I just feel so gooey inside. Maybe you do too. We have to close out, but before we do, Brittany, I'd love for you to share any next steps that we want to share with folks, ways that they can take action moving forward, and maybe we'll have some time for a dance out. I don't know. I feel like celebrating.
Yeah, totally. Well, I'm gonna remove all our spotlights so that we can end this call in community and in a circle and just see all the faces. So if you're off camera and you want to come on and just toggle to see, this is our biggest webinar I think we've ever had. And how amazing to get to celebrate in community together. And that's what we're here to do. And at Land Justice Futures, that's what we're here to try to help provide is there is a different way of doing this. And guess what? There's no roadmap, but there is a community and there are things that we're learning. We don't have to go it alone. And we're just so grateful to be in community with you. So we have a couple of ways that you can hop on the bandwagon. If you're wanting to know more, or just learn more, if you're someone that says, I'm showing up and I'm new, come join our learning platform or come check out our learning platform. We have resources online, guides, webinar recordings. We're making a new way together, but like I said, there's a lot that we've studied and learned already, and you can be a part of that. So there's a lot of free and accessible resources for religious landowners in particular to explore what this can look like in your own life. And then also support these dreams. We're going to put a link to the workforce development arm of the Lac du Flambeau Business Development Group. That's a nonprofit that There's not a donate link on the site, but there is an email. And Zach said that that's a place where the land is being held, and it would go to the organization that is supporting the future of this land. And lastly, Land Justice Futures is a grant and donation funded nonprofit that is trying to really say this is a community of practice. This is a movement and a home that we want to keep tending. And if you're inspired by this and you hope for more support to come to religious communities to take bold, brave, and creative next steps like FSPA did, then shoot us a donation or just tell your friends about us. We're always looking to grow the people around this hearth. So those are 3 ways that you can join our movement. And I can't believe that we get to do this with you all. We're so grateful.